Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Not Funny Guys Presents Red Dwarf Rewatch. I am your host, Dr. John, and we are now in the back half of Series 11, and we have reached Episode 4, Officer Rimmer, directed and written, of course, by Doug Naylor. This episode first aired on the 13th of October, 2016. And I would like to say a special commiseration that the gentleman who we will see playing the captain of the Nautilus passed away in 2021, but I'll talk about that later. He goes by the name of a Mr. Stephen Critchlow. So, tragically. But let's get into the episode. So we open with Starbug, and we find Lister asleep in the cockpit, talking about somebody named Inga and his sleep, till Kat wakes him up. It's a dream, and he was talking about something about flying, and Kryten then makes the reference that for Freud, there's my Freudian slip, posited that apparently flying in dreams is a sort of a representation of sex. Rimmer tells about how he flies in his dreams all the time, and it has nothing to do with sex. In fact, in his, the plane won't take off, and he can't get open a package of peanuts, and then all of a sudden they burst out over the place. He doesn't see it. We can all see it, but of course, it's Rimmer. We then find that they have located a deep space explorer ship in sort of a free fall on the other side of an asteroid belt. So on board the other ship, there we see a computer printing out what is apparently the needed crew member, in this case the captain, and something about the printer. They're printing out needed crew members, and the captain, of course, gets stuck in the printer, which is hilarious. Kryten and them scan the ship. It's a deep Space Corps ship. The crew is half. It's what they read at first, and then apparently it has a print-on-demand feature, and then all of a sudden the captain finally comes out of the printer malformed from the printer jam. It now reads the crew as one. It's apparently, and this is something Kryten shares, and it's bioprinted crew, a 24th century fad. Basically, the crew is printed from stem cells onto these little bodies based on demand when needed, and then they sort of dissolve themselves when mission accomplished. So it's like a print on demand. The ship is the Nautilus. It contacts Starbug. The captain, like I said, gets his face deformed because he was stuck jammed in the printer. He's in need of help. His engines have burned out, and he's drifting towards the asteroid field. He's talking to Rimmer, who then he gets mad at, and when he gets mad at Rimmer, Rimmer identifies himself as Lister. Apparently there's uranium on board, and if the ship blows up, it could cause a massive destruction within the vicinity. That's only if it enters the asteroid field. So before that does, Rimmer decides preemptively to launch a missile, a mining asteroid missile, at the ship before it gets close enough to destroy them. Turns out the missile gets knocked around and deflected, but then hits them, the Nautilus on the other side, destroying or damaging the engines enough to redirect them so they don't fall into the field. So the captain thinks it's a brilliant move, and then he orders a battlefield promotion, promoting Rimmer to officer for the incident, which is completely accidental. So this is terrible, because it immediately goes to Rimmer's head, as we will see. They go back to Red Dwarf to then go use it to get around the asteroid belt to pick up the Nautilus. It's going to take about 8 hours. Meanwhile, apparently Rimmer starts planning his promotion ceremony. With Kryten comes in, the paperwork's gone through. They want this massively over-the-top ceremony. He even starts standing in this very wide stance look. Kryten says that he seems to be aiming to establish a class system because he wants to open an officers club that will be exclusive. Basically, Rimmer versus everybody else. And this is to be followed throughout the episode. Kryten then reminds him, don't you think this is a little much, considering that was basically deceptive luck? He's not bothered. Lister and Kat find out that Rimmer has apparently changed privileges on it. So there's now an officer block on some of the channels they can watch, so they can't watch their show. And so they end up watching some rivalry match in croquet. They settle. They all get called to B deck to go to the hangar to meet Captain Herring. Rimmer now has established a grunts versus officer lifts, so they get separate but not equal lifts. His has Kryten in it with a full luxury lounge, for which he then kicks Kryten out to take the broken down grunt lift with the others. He's even segregated the corridors so that they have to walk through crummy corridors while he's on a pristine white corridor with a little people moving walkway, whatever those things they have at airports. They finally meet Captain Harry. He's played by Stephen Critchlow, as I noticed before. Unfortunately, he's passed away in 2021. He decides not to just promote Rimmer to officer, but the first lieutenant. Now that his mission is complete, he simply dissolves away, leaving Rimmer unfortunately in charge and nobody to demote him. He did get in a little grabbing Lister by the face, thinking he's Rimmer, or thinking that was him giving him the bad mouth chatter earlier. Red Dwarf now has the cargo on board the ship. Rimmer is playing this complete remodeling, and he wants Kryten to fix the bioprinter, which is calibrating. His plan is to print out a new crew, all people below him in rank. He's going full pompous smeghead here. Meanwhile, Kryten tries to quote Lincoln to him about power being a test, and Rimmer, of course, ignores it. And Kat and Lister are working with the printer, noting, like, you know, they've got to do something. He wants to print out somebody who can demote Rimmer. Meanwhile, somehow Lister's genome is in the database, and it turns out that Lister sold his genome rights to somebody for basically 100 pounds and half a bag of cigarettes. So Lister officially doesn't own himself, which is a hilarious thing. So he can basically be pawned off into other situations where basically people can clone him. Kryten is concerned that Lister's genome basically has become like software. Lister wants to delete the database. Kryten says he can't disobey Rimmer, and while he's doing that, he does help him set it up. All Lister has to do is push delete and pretending to chew him out as he leaves. Meanwhile, Rimmer and Kryten are in the hallway. He's found out about the database deletion. Of course, he blames Rimmer, but Rimmer blames Lister. So he needs DNA, and so he basically decides to duplicate himself, which there is his DNA on file. And this is a nightmare in the making, because we've done this before with the hologram version back in Me Too in series 1. So this can go nowhere good, obviously. So a bunch of Rimmers all of a sudden start walking down the hallway. They're all going to the officers club because they've all been made officers just below ranks to Rimmer the hologram, or Rimmer Prime as we'll call him for this episode. Rimmer is their commander. Kat and Lister are not on the list, so they can't actually get in there, and they're looking for the printer, and they think he's hiding in the club. He's even printed out a barbershop quartet of himself to serve as entertainment, singing about him. It's disgusting. Lister and Kat force their way into the club, and so Rimmer is mad about this, and he goes and orders Kryten to print out muscular versions of himself to act as bouncers. And of course, this is where it all goes wrong. I just thought it would go wrong with all the arrogance in the room, but the calibration they have to fix to make this work, and then a result, the new printed out Rimmer gets jammed, in fact, several of them, and what ends up happening is they get stuck in the printer, and they finally come out as this monstrosity of this monster of melded Rimmers. It's like, everyone starts running because they start attacking, devouring, and absorbing the other Rimmers. So Kryten and Rimmer are forced to take the grunt lift at one point. They're running, trying to get to the officers' quarters. Kryten says he's going to take the stairs. And so he has to tell the others, he has to warn them. It's all gone wrong. Even when Rimmer does get in the lift, he even shuts the door on other Rimmers. So it's all for himself. The crew minus Rimmer are now in their little bunks areas, and they're basically watching what looks like a Pac-Man display of the monster devouring the other Rimmers, moving around. Rimmer comes running from the monster, demands to be led into their quarters, but to do so, they demand that he resigns, and immediately his officer uniform goes away, and they let him in. The monsters, of course, are made up of stem cells, programmable, and it's combined all his faults, lust for power, everything. So the monster isn't just a physically deformed, hideous creature. It's an amalgamation, supercharged version of all the bad things about Rimmer. So they then get the original Rimmer to go out there to act as bait so they can lure and destroy the monster. Now, this is where the funny little ending comes in. So they've lured him in there, but an emergency door comes down, so they have to go around the long way to save Rimmer. But they can't shoot him initially with the bazookoids because they might hit their Rimmer, for which Kat sees no problem. Of course he would. So they distract it. Lister distracts it by reminding him that if he's true Rimmer, he has to make a to-do list. And while he's making the to-do list, because of course he has a pen, the other Rimmer sneaks around, and then they're able to kill it after Lister tells him, don't forget to put down the final thing on your to-do list, die. So it's a funny throwback episode. It's kind of like an amalgamation of some previous episodes, but it's a lot of fun. I mean, this is a silly episode of, I know exactly where this is going to end. So of course we do. Next time we'll be looking at Krysis with a K. So I'm assuming it'll be about Kryten. But until that time, please like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Please write us. Tell us things you like. Tell us your favorite Red Dwarf episode, because I'm going to be making lists. You can do that at notfunnyguys.offthereels@gmail.com. Or you can contact me. That's in the ticker below, but you can also contact me in any of the socials, particularly if you use Instagram or TikTok. Those are the ones that I usually manage. Casey, my other Not Funny Guy, typically manages our X and Blue Sky account. I'm sorry, Twitter account. I'm not calling it by that dead. I'm calling it by its dead name. If you get that joke, you get that joke. But that's for you, Elon. Of course, we'll be moving on to news radio once we finish this. But like I said, I plan on doing as much stuff with Red Dwarf as we can. So we're definitely going to be doing some ranking episodes in the future. So in the meantime, though, if you want to catch up, you definitely should be subscribing to this channel. But if you want to check out some of our another Not Funny Guys, we do the TV over here. Over on our main podcast, Not Funny Guys presents Off the Reels. Casey, Eric, and myself, we do movies, and we are finishing up our 1984, What Were You Like in the 90s run with The Shadow, Stargate, and finally The Crow coming next week. And then we'll be moving on to the live action Batman films. And I'm sure we'll put in some clarification about how we selected them, because the Lego Batman film I think is also getting included this, but I'm trying to remember what kind of context we decided. We will not be doing Batman v Superman, or for that matter, we will not be covering Justice League movie, because you do not want to get me started on Zack Snyder. But we'll be covering standalone Batman films, not animated ones. So that's where we're going there. Meanwhile, Casey and Eric also have another podcast, Not Funny Guys Presents Wrestling with the Horror of It All, where they talk about wrestling and horror films. When Casey is currently on vacation at the moment, but when they get back, they've been putting out some of the Scream films that we've covered on the main podcast on their feed, and I'm sure they'll pick right back up when they get back. And then if you want to hear some interesting sort of commentary on culture, politics, AI, everything, or just the things we're thinking about, come check out myself and our Not Funny Gal, Dr. Kristen, on our podcast, Not Funny Guys Presents Thinking About Thinking. We are currently working on, and we'll be putting out a 2-part episode discussing anti-Semitism. Since that's become such a big thing, we really wanted to dive deep on it and give it a proper understanding, since it's become kind of a catch-all term that I think people who are even using it don't seem to quite understand. So that will definitely get a little political, a little, racy, you might say, a little touchy. Don't cancel us. Well, you can try. But yeah, canceling doesn't happen, folks. Not really. So in the meantime, though, to stay on topic here, remember, don't be a smeghead. Keep it not funny. And I'll see you next time.